Okay, let's unpack this. You've probably seen the headlines swirling around recently,
Mm,
maybe, a snippet on the news, a report you clicked on. The warnings seem to be getting louder and, well, incredibly specific now.
yeah.
We're hearing these predictions of a, quote, white-collar bloodbath, this idea that AI could just wipe out a massive number of jobs we thought were, relatively safe.
It's certainly a striking phrase, isn't it? And what's been, well, fascinating to observe, just looking at the information we've gathered, is how quickly that kind of language has jumped from, say, niche tech discussions right into the mainstream media spotlight.
Absolutely. So welcome everyone to this deep dive. We're taking a really close look today at the significant and honestly what feels like a rapidly accelerating impact of AI, artificial intelligence, on the job market.
Yeah, accelerating feels like the right word.
And we're focusing particularly on those white-collar roles. We want to explore the core warnings being issued, look at the predicted scale of this disruption from different angles, understand the fundamental why behind this change right now.
And maybe most importantly,
Exactly. Dig into what this could mean specifically for you. And we'll also explore some pretty fascinating strategies and platforms that are actually emerging right now to help navigate this, well, this seismic shift.
yeah, and we've pulled together insights from quite a range of sources for this deep dive. We're
Mhm.
looking at reports from major networks like, MSNBC, CNN, the BBC, Bloomberg.
The big names.
Right. Alongside research from institutions you'll definitely recognize, like Oxford University, McKinsey, Goldman Sachs, plus some personal insights and audio that were shared with our team, which offer a really unique perspective on all this.
Okay.
So our mission here really is to cut through some of the noise, distill the core messages about this disruption, present the different forecasts on, how big this could be,
Mhm.
understand the powerful forces behind it, and then crucially pivot to look at the potential paths forward, the opportunities that might actually be presenting themselves.
And just quickly, before we dive fully in, this deep dive is brought to you by blockchaincompany.info, which is our media platform.
And it's sponsored by 4IR Utility Token and 4IR GPT.
You can explore the whole 4IR utility ecosystem, everything that's being built, by visiting 4irtoken.com. And we'd really encourage you, go check out and sign up to 4irgpt.com.
Yeah.
This is the first flagship platform being developed specifically for AI, knowledge exchange, and trading. It's a place where you can actually start thinking about monetizing your knowledge, your unique intelligence, your domain expertise through something called prompts. We'll get into that.
And just a note for any startups or companies listening in, if you're interested in sponsoring a deep dive like this one, or maybe even having a spotlight deep dive focused entirely on your brand and what you offer, you can get in touch with us through our YouTube account or just directly via 4irgpt.com.
And while you're thinking about it, please, if you haven't already, take just a second right now and click that subscribe button on the BC Podcast's YouTube channel.
Yeah, it really helps.
It really does help support the content we're producing, and it ensures you stay informed about future deep dives. Plus, keep an ear out because we'll be announcing future 4IR credits giveaways. These are designed specifically to help you get started and become more skilled in prompt media engineering on 4IR GPT. That whole process of using your unique knowledge to work effectively with AI.
Okay, so let's get into the heart of it then. What's really driving this recent surge in warnings? What's the trigger?
Well, it really seemed to crystallize with some specific statements that, frankly, grab headlines everywhere. Dario Amodei, he's the CEO of the AI company Anthropic.
Right, Anthropic.
He was quoted warning that AI could eliminate up to half of all entry-level white-collar jobs.
And like you mentioned earlier, the speed with which that particular warning, that specific quote, was just amplified across networks, CNN, BBC, Bloomberg, MSNBC. It was really notable. It wasn't just some niche tech story. It went wide incredibly fast.
Yeah, it feels almost like a sudden, widespread acknowledgement of something really serious.
Right.
Some of the material we looked at suggested that the sheer speed and the candidness, as they put it, of the media's reporting on this felt surprising, maybe signaling a significant wake-up call for everyone.
Exactly. It's hard to ignore when it's coming from so many prominent sources almost simultaneously. And some reports go even further, connecting this potential job disruption to much broader societal implications.
Right, there's analysis pointing directly to the risk of political unrest as a consequence of widespread job losses.
Yeah.
This isn't entirely new. It echoes concerns that were highlighted even back in reports like the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report 2021,
Mm-hmm.
where scenarios involving, fears of company headquarters being burnt down were actually mentioned. That level of concern.
Yeah, and we also saw a specific prediction attributed to Steve Bannon, cited in one source anyway, suggesting civil unrest specifically for Donald Trump by 2028, and explicitly linking it to job losses driven by this technological shift.
Okay.
Now, it's really crucial here to stress, we're presenting these as specific predictions and viewpoints we encountered in the source material. They reflect the range of concerns and forecasts being made out there. We're not endorsing them, just reporting what's being said.
Understood. Objectivity is key here. So that's the core warning, the bloodbath idea. But what about the scale? How many jobs are we potentially talking about? And, have these kinds of warnings been made before, or is this different?
Well, concerns about automation hitting jobs aren't new, certainly not. You can look back to reports from around, say, 2014 to 2016, like some we saw from Oxford University.
Right.
They predicted back then that around 45% of existing jobs would be impacted. Now, they use that word carefully, impacted, meaning jobs would either be significantly changed, augmented by AI, or potentially made redundant.
I think I remember seeing something way back then about Y Combinator when Sam Altman was still heavily involved, reportedly looking into universal basic income research, which, it felt like a real stretch at the time.
It did, yeah.
But now, looking at the scale of disruption being talked about today, maybe it doesn't seem quite so far-fetched as it did back then.
Exactly. And this current wave of reports, well, it offers quite varying numbers on the potential scale, which itself kind of highlights how complex this prediction really is. The World Economic Forum recently estimated 83 million jobs could be impacted.
Okay, 83 million. But then you see numbers like McKinsey's prediction. You're talking about around 900 million jobs impacted globally.
Huge difference.
A vastly higher figure. And, it's perhaps telling, although maybe not directly related in cause, that McKinsey themselves recently announced significant layoffs impacting about 10% of their global workforce. That's around 4,500 employees.
Yeah, that was big news. And then Goldman Sachs offered another estimate, somewhere around 300 million jobs impacted.
So the numbers are all over the place, really. 83 million, 300 million, 900 million.
They are. But the key takeaway, the overwhelming consensus across all these different sources, regardless of the precise number they land on, is that, quote, everything is going to change.
Right.
The potential scale of disruption is just unlike anything we've seen in recent history.
So why now? We've had automation for decades, computers, robots. What is it about this specific wave of AI that's prompting such dire predictions and these huge varying scale estimates? What's the fundamental why here?
The core reason, and this comes through really clearly in the source material, it just comes down to AI's current capabilities, what it can do now.
Okay.
It can perform complex tasks, things that previously required significant human effort, often much faster, definitely cheaper, and at a scale that was, frankly, unimaginable just a few years ago.
You mentioned seeing a great example of this, comparing how you'd create complex media, like this deep dive, using traditional methods versus what AI can now facilitate.
Right. Think about the old way. You'd need studio booking, coordinating reporters, editors, maybe camera crew, script writing, fact-checking, all the post-production.
Weeks of work, lots of people.
Exactly. Weeks, lots of people, significant cost. The capability we're seeing now with AI means that whole process can be collapsed dramatically. It points to a level of intelligence and, crucially, efficiency that is just fundamentally different from before.
And, looking at it from a purely business perspective, especially for those publicly listed companies, the ones really driven by quarterly earnings and shareholder value, what the source kind of bluntly terms capitalism in this context.
Yeah.
The economic incentive to automate is just incredibly powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Human capital, as they describe it, is astonishingly expensive.
Yeah.
It's not just the salary.
No, not at all.
It's benefits, pensions, healthcare contributions, all of it. So if a machine or an AI system can do a job, especially an entry-level one, faster and cheaper, well, companies are heavily incentivized to adopt that tech.
And this pressure, it's already hitting specific industries in ways that really illustrate the why. Take the legal industry, for example.
That example about IPO prospectuses was particularly striking. These documents are incredibly complex, vital for a company going public.
Absolutely essential.
They can cost what, upwards of $1 million just for the prospectus itself, part of a multi-million-dollar whole IPO process involving lawyers, financial advisors like Duff and Phelps. The source even mentioned their own 4IR token regulatory approval process took like 3.5 years.
3.5 years, yeah, involving tons of legal work.
But now, the analysis we're seeing suggests AI can draft maybe 95% of a document like that within minutes, or maybe an hour.
Minutes or an hour?
Think about that difference. 3.5 years for part of the 4IR process versus potentially an hour with AI. This isn't just, making things a bit more efficient. It fundamentally changes the whole financial viability of traditional legal work in certain areas. We're talking potentially billions of dollars in disruption for that industry alone.
And there was even an anecdote mentioned about a lawyer, I think her name was Anessa, on LinkedIn, openly acknowledging this exact shift happening right now.
Wow. Okay, what other industries?
Well, software engineering is another area highlighted pretty consistently. If AI can reportedly write, again, maybe 95% of the code needed for many applications,
Yeah.
then you just don't need those massive teams of engineers for the basic coding tasks anymore. The focus shifts, right? You need fewer people, maybe for oversight, for high-level architecture, for the really tricky bits.
So the nature of the job changes completely.
Completely. And even consulting firms, kind of paradoxically, right? The ones who advise other companies on efficiency.
They're not immune?
Apparently not. That McKinsey layoff example, while sure, it's probably multifaceted, it's cited in the material as evidence that even these really knowledge-intensive firms are implementing significant workforce reductions, perhaps driven, at least in part, by their own adoption of AI tools.
And then there was that really disruptive prediction mentioned involving the whole software as a service sector, SaaS.
Yeah, that was eye-opening. Satya Nadella, Microsoft's CEO, was reportedly quoted saying SaaS is effectively dead or maybe over.
Dead. That's a strong word for a huge sector.
It is, but the context there is really important. Most SaaS platforms, the ones we use every day, were largely built before the era of these incredibly powerful large language models, the LLMs like GPT.
Okay.
AI's current capabilities can now replicate much of the functionality that these standalone services provide. So it potentially disrupts a sector that has reportedly attracted just a huge amount of venture capital. One estimate mentioned was 80% of VC money going there.
So those SaaS companies are under immense pressure to pivot, as the source put it.
Huge pressure. And the example given of Claire, that company reportedly laying off over 2,000 staff out of 5,000.
Wow, that's a big cut.
Yeah. Since 2023, specifically to transition to using AI, it illustrates the point starkly. Now, apparently the CEO later commented they might rehire some people because AI isn't quite fully capable across the board yet. But that initial massive move towards an AI-first model really highlights the underlying trend, efficiency through automation.
Just discussing these points, acknowledging the speed and the potential scale of this disruption, it can feel, well, uncomfortable for some people, can't it? The source material mentioned facing reactions like getting looked at funny or people just choosing to snigger.
Yeah, denial maybe, or just difficulty processing it.
Which perhaps speaks to that other idea that was brought up that maybe most human beings don't naturally really look at what the real reality is. There's this risk, this historical pattern of the 1% always exploit the ignorance of the 99%. And this can kind of tie into concepts like hyper-normalization, where something that's actually quite bizarre or disruptive becomes accepted as normal over time, just through repetitive exposure, like advertising, or maybe certain media narratives that don't fully confront the pace of this change. It just becomes easier to dismiss the uncomfortable truths.
So if this level of disruption is the reality we're facing, and it seems to be accelerating, what is the path forward for individuals? I mean, can we stop it? Can we adapt? What do we do?
Well, the message coming through from the sources we looked at is pretty firm on this point. Trying to ban AI is, quote, not even possible, probably very stupid, and realistically never going to happen anyway.
Right, the genie's out of the bottle.
Pretty much. The focus absolutely needs to be on adaptation. The advice cited from that MSNBC report was incredibly blunt. You had just better go and learn how to make sure you can prompt.
That's really the core message emerging everywhere, isn't it? The absolute need for humans to learn to work with AI, to stay relevant, to remain, useful to your employer or even self-employed. You need to understand how to leverage these new capabilities. And a huge part of that is learning how to prompt effectively.
And this is exactly where that fundamental insight from the source material really comes into sharp focus.
Yeah.
If machines are getting exceptionally good at doing the tasks, processing the data, handling routine functions,
Hmm.
what's the distinct human value proposition?
Yeah, what's left for us?
It's your brains, your knowledge,
Huh.
your experience, your critical thinking. The opportunity shifts completely to figuring out how to monetize your knowledge along with AI using AI.
Right.
And this is essentially what this idea of prompt engineering enables. It's about applying your unique intelligence, your specific understanding, your critical judgment to direct AI's vast capabilities towards useful ends.
And this realization, this understanding about the changing nature of what constitutes valuable human work, that's apparently what drove the whole development of the 4IR ecosystem, the 4IR token, and
Yeah.
specifically 4IR GPT as a kind of visionary response to this unfolding reality.
Kind of get ahead of the curve.
Exactly. Aiming to keep the company, as they put it, day one in this completely new landscape.
So the 4IR token itself, the idea there is for it to be a currency specifically designed to represent and unlock value within this fourth industrial revolution,
Mhm.
which is seen as this huge, potentially multi-trillion-dollar future market.
Mm-hmm.
It's being built with this ambition of becoming a foundational asset in that new digital economy. The source even drew a parallel to how Bitcoin is often viewed as digital gold.
Okay.
And they mentioned again that rigorous 3.5-year regulatory approval process just for the token.
Right. Building trust and legitimacy. And then there's 4IR GPT. This platform, as you said, was specifically conceived and built for AI knowledge exchange and trading. The insight apparently came after ChatGPT burst onto the scene in late 2022.
Right, when everyone suddenly saw what was possible.
Exactly. Recognizing that if machines are going to take over more and more routine tasks, humans absolutely need a mechanism, a way to leverage and monetize their most valuable remaining asset, their unique knowledge and expertise, by collaborating with AI.
Okay, let's spend a little time exploring that specific concept, knowledge monetization.
Yeah.
How does it actually work? How could a platform like 4IR GPT facilitate it?
Well, the core mechanism is really about allowing users like you to take your unique knowledge, your specific expertise, and encapsulate it, package it somehow into these things called prompts, which can then be traded or shared or sold on the platform.
And this isn't just for tech wizards, right?
Not at all. That's the key. It could be expertise in, I don't know, gourmet cooking, organic gardening, traditional medicine, contract law, sustainable architecture, even something seemingly mundane like expert dog walking tips or unique insights for traveling in a specific region. Any domain where deep knowledge exists.
So how does AI fit in? Where's the amplification?
Right, because the AI's large language models, they've been trained on these enormous data sets. They know everything in a very broad sense. But human expertise is still absolutely essential to guide that vast knowledge, to prompt it correctly, as the source says, and to amplify it exponentially in specific valuable ways.
Okay, can you give an example?
Sure. The Cape Town tourism example used in the source material is a great illustration. An AI knows general facts about Cape Town attractions, history, etc.
Right.
But a local expert, someone who lives there, knows the hidden gems, the best exact time to visit an obscure viewpoint to avoid crowds and get the perfect light, who makes the absolute best version of a local delicacy that tourists never find.
That real inside knowledge.
Exactly. That unique human insight can be formulated into a specific prompt. And when that prompt is run through the AI, the output becomes something far more worthy, far more valuable, because it draws on the AI's vast general knowledge, but it's been directed and refined by specific, deep human intelligence.
Like that anecdote about CNN spotlighting Cape Town's unique Finbo's plants in the seed vault. That kind of deep niche knowledge.
Precisely. That's exactly the kind of obscure but valuable local knowledge that could potentially be packaged and monetized via prompts on a platform like this.
So on a platform like 4IR GPT, users would essentially create their own, what do they call it? A prompt media channel.
Yeah, that's the term used. And you can kind of think about the potential scale by comparing it to something familiar, like YouTube. YouTube has millions, maybe billions of videos. The vision for 4IR GPT seems similar, a platform potentially hosting millions or billions of these neuronic prompts, as they're termed, each one representing a piece of distilled human intelligence or expertise.
Monetize your neurons, that phrase. It sounds a bit, I don't know, futuristic. Maybe even a little off-putting at first.
It does, yeah. And the source material acknowledges that potential initial reaction. But the way it's reframed is about helping people become, quote, fit for purpose. In an economy where abstract knowledge, cognitive skill, the ability to think critically and direct AI are becoming the truly paramount skills.
Okay, so practically, what are some specific ways this knowledge trading or monetization could actually work on a platform like 4IR GPT?
Well, several ways were outlined. You could directly sell access to prompts you've meticulously created that embody your expertise. So sticking with the lawyer example, if you specialize in residential rental agreements,
Yeah.
you could create a really sophisticated prompt that, when used with an AI by a landlord or tenant, helps generate a high-quality, customized draft agreement based on their specific inputs and jurisdiction. They pay you for access to use that prompt.
Okay, so selling your pre-made expertise. What else?
Or, conversely, a user needing specific expertise could actively request a prompt from an expert on the platform.
Like a commission.
Yeah. Exactly. So maybe a small business owner needs a specific type of non-disclosure agreement. They could find a suitable lawyer on 4IR GPT, describe their exact needs, request a custom prompt be created for them, pay a fee to that expert, and then they'd own that resulting prompt for their own use.
I see. That makes sense.
Experts could also use their channels more interactively, perhaps inviting others to watch how they approach crafting complex prompts, or even holding live sparring sessions where they tackle problems using prompts, showcasing their cognitive intelligence and their prompting skills in real time.
And this leads into another really interesting potential application that was mentioned in the source material, using this for recruitment.
Exactly. This was fascinating. In a world where AI is handling many of the routine tasks, simply listing past job titles on a CV or resume, it just becomes less informative about someone's actual capabilities.
Yeah, what can they do now with AI?
Precisely. So employers and recruiters could potentially use these prompt media channels as a novel way to assess a candidate's genuine cognitive intelligence, their critical thinking skills, and crucially, their demonstrated ability to effectively work with AI tools.
Will that work?
Recruiters could even set specific prompt-based challenges or questions for candidates as part of the application process. You'd see their problem-solving process, their creativity, their efficiency in using AI in action, not just what they claim on paper.
That's actually a really powerful idea.
Yeah.
Moving beyond the CV.
Yeah. And just tying back quickly to something we mentioned earlier, if you're already, say, a YouTube creator, you've got an existing audience expertise.
Right.
The source highlights that a platform like 4iGPT could serve as another potential revenue source for you. And interestingly, also provide a way to amplify your existing YouTube channel, potentially driving traffic back and forth, leading to more subscribers on YouTube as well.
A symbiotic relationship.
Totally, yeah.
You're listening to This Deep Dive, brought to you by blockchaincompany.info and sponsored by 4IR Utility Token and 4IR GPT.
To learn more about the entire ecosystem and the vision behind it, you can head over to 4irtoken.com.
And to start exploring how you could leverage your own knowledge in this new landscape, definitely sign up for free over at 4irgpt.com.
That's right. And when you sign up, you'll receive 10 free credits to help you get started, begin building out your own prompt media channel, and just explore how you might monetize your expertise.
It really does seem like a fantastic way, particularly for existing creators, maybe those on YouTube or other platforms, to find a new revenue stream and cross-promote their content. And remember to keep an eye out for those future 4IR credits giveaways we mentioned, which can really help you hone those essential prompt media engineering skills.
Okay, so let's maybe pull back for just a moment and look at the slightly broader vision and the future that was hinted at in the source material. Beyond 4IR GPT specifically, the wider ecosystem apparently includes other developments too.
Right, the concept of 4irjob.com was mentioned, with this really intriguing, maybe slightly sci-fi idea of potentially launching it specifically for agentic AI.
Yeah, agentic AI, essentially AI agents applying for jobs themselves.
Machines applying for jobs.
That's the idea presented. Examples like, remember the Claire company cutting staff to use AI? Well, imagine Claire potentially seeking AI agents, not people for specific finance roles or customer service positions, machines directly filling those roles.
Wow, okay, that definitely feels like the next level.
And this leads into that broader concept of machine-to-machine, M2M, transactions becoming increasingly common, maybe even the norm. Visa was cited as reportedly exploring the idea of giving AI agents associated with Visa cards the ability to actually make spending decisions on your behalf.
Your AI credit card agent going shopping for you.
Something like that seems to be the direction explored. Now, despite all these challenges, the disruption, the potential job losses we discussed earlier, there's also a significant long-term optimistic vision presented in the material.
Oh, really? What's that?
The core idea is that AI ultimately makes civilization better. It makes human beings better. The argument isn't that AI is necessarily a threat to humanity in the long run, but that it can actually help us evolve into, quote, better intelligent human along with AI.
How so?
Well, the thinking seems to be that by automating the drudgery, the routine tasks, AI might actually free humans up to re-engage with one another on a much deeper, more meaningful level.
Like knowing your neighbors again.
Exactly. Knowing your neighbors, maybe kids playing outside together more, people actually dating again instead of just endlessly swiping on apps. This kind of societal re-engagement is seen as a potential, and they use this phrase, theological, technological point evolution.
Theological, technological evolution. That's quite a concept.
It is. Now, it's fully acknowledged that navigating this transition period will be challenging. There will likely be initial panic, confusion, resistance.
Understandably.
Absolutely. But the perspective offered is that eventually, after the storm comes calm. Drawing a parallel, perhaps, to the societal shifts and adaptations we saw after major events like the COVID pandemic, humans adapt.
Okay, so let's try and quickly recap the key threads we've explored in this deep dive then. First, the warnings about AI's impact, particularly on white-collar jobs. They're serious, they're widespread across major media outlets now, and the pace feels like it's accelerating.
Right. And while the exact numbers predicted for job impact vary wildly, from tens of millions to nearly a billion globally, the underlying consensus across all the major reports is that a huge disruption is coming. It's driven by AI's rapidly increasing capabilities and that powerful economic imperative for efficiency.
The path forward, according to the analysis we've seen, isn't about trying to stop it, it's about adaptation. It really means humans learning how to work with AI, and crucially, developing new skills like prompt engineering to leverage their unique human knowledge and judgment.
And this fundamental shift really highlights this emerging opportunity for knowledge monetization, finding ways to package, share, and exchange human expertise, amplified by AI, through new kinds of platforms.
We looked specifically at how a platform like 4IR GPT aims to facilitate exactly this, through prompt trading and exchange, potentially creating new revenue streams for individuals, a way to amplify existing channels like YouTube, and maybe even offering novel methods for recruitment that focus on cognitive abilities rather than just resumes.
And while acknowledging the transition will undoubtedly have its challenges and cause anxiety, the long-term vision presented is ultimately optimistic, suggesting AI can contribute to human flourishing and maybe even deeper societal re-engagement by freeing us from certain types of labor.
This deep dive was brought to you by blockchaincompany.info, sponsored by 4IR Utility Token and 4IR GPT.
We really do encourage you to visit 4irtoken.com to learn more about the whole ecosystem vision. And importantly, sign up for free at 4irgpt.com.
That's right. Get your 10 free credits when you sign up. Use them to explore building your own prompt media channel. And just start thinking about how you can leverage and potentially monetize your unique knowledge in this rapidly changing landscape. It feels like a really concrete step you can take today.
And remember, if you're already a creator on platforms like YouTube, this offers a potential way to add another revenue stream and get some useful amplification for your existing work. And for any companies listening who might be interested in sponsorship opportunities, please do reach out via our YouTube channel or directly through 4irgpt.com.
And finally, please do support the channel, help us keep making these deep dives, and ensure you don't miss future episodes and giveaways by hitting that subscribe button right now on the BC Podcasts YouTube channel.
Please do.
And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with, something to mull over, building on everything we've discussed today. As AI continues its incredible pace of development, automating more and more tasks, really forcing us into this fundamental reevaluation of what constitutes valuable human work. How might your unique blend of knowledge, your specific experience, and your innate ability to think critically and ask the right questions, how might that become the most valuable currency you possess in the future economy? And perhaps more importantly, what concrete steps can you start taking, maybe even today, to identify, hone, and begin to leverage that unique potential?